Thank you all for coming to this session for this IEEE at Home Blockchain Series 2025. This session is also, this webinar is also provided by the WP9 Capacity Building Project within the Blockchain PT Agenda and co-funded by the PRR. Today we'll be talking about tokenizing data in green projects. Yes, we are. We'll be talking about tokenizing data in green projects. So Nico Varma is an associate professor of management at Ramapo College, New Jersey. He will be leading us and exploring how data tokenization is unblocking new value in the digital economy by evaluating and blockchain integrity. The goal is to build a high quality, reliable data layer. The session will also tackle key challenges like decentralized identity and policy alignment, which are critical steps towards a scalable tokenized data economy. So Dr. Nico Varma is an associate professor and technical lead at Algo Barat. I don't know if I said it right, but if I haven't, you'll correct me, with more than 25 years of experience in tech and business. He's a blockchain expert and entrepreneur. He focuses on decentralized systems, digital identity, and regulatory compliance. He teaches globally and promotes blockchain as a tool for trust and equity and transformation across industries through thought leadership and practical solutions. Our session can be interactive, or we could have like 40 minutes plus Q&A. It all depends on how you wish to proceed. It's up to you. I must welcome you and thank you for being here with us. And the stage is yours. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity and the introduction. As you mentioned, I would just like to give you a little bit of a background of what was my motivation. How did I go about doing this? There is a lot of technology involved in this in the proposal that I'm going to be presenting, but the motivation that came about is from my real life experience. And this is in the year 2016 when I moved to the United States. That is when I wanted to buy a house, and then, just finished my PhD, was not very liquid, did not have too much of capital on me. As all of you can probably relate to, as professors, we are not in this profession to make money, but that's but as I started my career, we bought a house, and when I went to buy the house, they said 20% down payment. And that 20% down payment was a lot of money. So I looked at my finances. I said, I can put only 10%. Then they said, okay, yeah, if you put 10%, then you will have to buy mortgage insurance, which is $250 a month. So I looked around, and then I found a company which gave me 10%. Along with me, they paid the 10% down payment. Okay. And the only thing was that when I would sell the house, whatever is the profit, extra price, they would take 30% of that money. So essentially, I was buying the house for, say, $500,000. If I sold it for $50,000 more, then they would take 30%, $15,000 plus whatever $50,000 they gave me. So they'll get $65,000. I thought it was a good deal. I took it. And in a few years, my finances started getting better. This was exactly the year of COVID, 2020, when me and my wife decided that we can buy back our equity, because we wanted to kind of buy. There was a provision that you could buy back the equity. Somebody came and evaluated the house. They evaluated the house at the same price that I had bought. So, and then, I had to pay the check. So I made a check for the same amount, which they had written to me. So in 3 years, I got money with zero interest, and with saved mortgage payment also, and saved on the mortgage insurance also. So when in New Jersey, we have attorneys, and the attorney who was dealing with this called my wife and said, I want to talk to your husband. How did he manage to do this? In 35 years, I have not seen anything like this. Not that I'm very smart or anything, but it was just a matter of chance that I understood what this company was doing. So when I went and met this person, social distancing, we spoke for a bit, and I explained to him what was this idea. The idea was this company had 10% stake in my house. That 10% stake was the liquidity that they were getting. And since it was a real world asset, they would be able to trade with a leverage of 12. So essentially, they put $50,000. They were able to trade with a leverage of 12 because they had a real fixed asset. And with that trade, they had already made the money that they had put in my house. And so this is my motivation for this presentation that I will be talking about. But then this involves the whole of technology and this whole blockchain infrastructure. The key idea over here, of course, is that I have been working extensively in the sustainability space with blockchain to be able to create carbon credits, to be able to create high quality carbon credits, traceable carbon credits, protecting the carbon credits from double accounting, making sure that the tokenized carbon credits can be fractionalized and sold in multiple places, and the retirement process can be documented in a blockchain. So when a company says that we've kind of offset our carbon footprint, there is a blockchain traceability to it. So that is the key process here. But when I look at all these carbon projects, most of them are actually running by government grants. They are not sustainable projects. So just to give you a little bit of a background and context, but I will move further with my presentation. The idea over here is I want to tokenize this environmental data. I want to make sure that even before this carbon credit tokenization is done, how do we tokenize the data that is going to be used to create the carbon credit? So essentially, suppose you have a biodigester. Okay, a biodigester has, there is manure, animal manure that is put into the biodigester, and the household is using that biogas, which is basically a replacement of wood. And this replacement of wood it reduces the carbon footprint. So if we are able to say that they have offset the wood replacement process, then they will get some carbon credits based on a calculating factor which any exchange gives. But this is done manually as of now, right? There is no technology involved in this particular process. The whole process works very manually. And I'm designed processes with IoT, with artificial intelligence and blockchain to be able to record this data in real time basis and be able to use this data to be able to build those carbon credits so that there is no auditing required in this process. So if you don't have to audit, you will be able to the credits would have a much higher value, because what happens is you have a person on the ground who says, okay, I will give you only 50% of what you're asking. Why? Because I don't think they look at a sample only. They cannot go to every single household. They'll probably look at 5 households out of 500 and say, out of the 5, 2 were good, 1 was not so good, 1 was very bad. And, so based on that, I'm just going to give you only a percentage of what carbon credit you should actually get. And that's making these carbon credit or carbon credit generating projects unsustainable. They are no longer sustainable. People are coming out of that business because there is no money there. And if there is no money, then you will have to rely on grants. And if there is no grant, then basically you will end up doing something else. So the people who are actually going to help us create a more sustainable world, a more green world, reduce the carbon offset, are people who are not going to be, who are not able to sustain that business model anymore. At the same time, there is no incentive for good behavior. So essentially, a household which is actually maintaining the biodigester. I'm giving an example of biodigester because that's more complex, but solar panel and other things are also same. A household which has a biodigester and is maintaining it really well, cleaning it up regularly and everything, gets the same credit as a household which is not doing, because this is a sampling problem. So what we are looking at is how with IoT, AI, and blockchain, we are able to build an infrastructure with high performance computing with a low cost, because it has to be scalable to be able to tokenize this environmental data. This is very similar to the wine example. It's just like, if you go to a vineyard, of course, all of you must have visited a vineyard staying in Portugal, with the amazing wine that comes from Portugal. So if you go to a vineyard and you look at the grapes actually do not have an economic value. It is the wine that has the economic value, right? But the farmers are able to get an operating capital for their future crop, right? So essentially, if they are able to present that, this is my capacity of wine production, and that is, they go to a bank or a financing institution, the financing institution gives them an operating capital. With that, they are able to sustain for the period of time when they are actually harvesting their crop. And once their crop is harvested, then they are able to pay back their loans, and this is how the whole trade and economy works, right? But over here, we are not having anything tangible like a grape. It's an analogy, but we have only data, right? And as people who are providing technology to this world, why can't we have, this is not a philosophical question, this is actually a real implementation that I'm talking, why can't we have data as an asset? Why can't we have a mechanism where this data is something that I can lock in to some secure place? And if I lock into some secure place, I will be able to generate money from that. And if I have a mechanism to be able to do that, then I will be able to provide liquidity in these kind of projects also. Now, what are the current problems that we've seen with most of these digitized projects? So they have a bit of digitization in these projects, but the data is in silos. It is in a stored in a database or in smaller databases, and then kind of put all together. Okay, there is not a regular or a dynamic verification process. So the verification process is done on a periodic basis. So we don't know what we don't know, kind of a thing. And the transaction costs are very high because the technology is not developed well at the IoT level to be able to capture the data securely and transmit the data securely. And this results in a delayed monetization process. So essentially, even if you are digitizing your carbon project, even if you are collecting that data in from the carbon project, you will get money only when you get the carbon credits. So most of the people that I've spoke to for starters said, why do I have to digitize? There is no need to digitize. We'll just follow the old traditional model because digitization is an overhead cost on top of whatever I'm doing. So there are multiple arguments to it. The carbon credit market actually does not work like every carbon credit has the same price. It works on a quality process. So one of the motivations that for digitization is that the quality of the carbon credit goes higher. But even then, they are tokenizing the carbon credit and saying we are digitized. They are not digitizing the data at source. And that becomes a huge challenge. So essentially what we are looking at from a wine perspective over here is that we are using that raw data as grapes on the wine. That is the key idea. How can we use that raw data as grapes on the wine? This is, and I'll talk to you about how we are going to get set up with that. And then we do some kind of a data transformation process using artificial intelligence. Okay. And finally, when that data is ready to be able to convert it into carbon credit, it's like waiting for the vintage, right? And you are able to kind of get money from the carbon credits. But while you are waiting, you are able to extract value. Okay, this is what blockchain infrastructure will provide to us. But before we get into that, these are some research areas that we need to look at. How do we do environmental monitoring with IoT devices? So this is where all the innovation is going to come in. how do we put those IT devices, which would be communicating devices, where the data is captured in real time. When the data is captured in real time, there would be a lot of data. There will be a continuous flow of data. How do we kind of use this data structures, this stream of data, to be able to kind of store it? Or do we store it, or do we compute it at a local level? Okay, and this brings in this whole construct of the IoT architecture for sustainability. And this is where we have the ability to do some kind of baselining with IoT technology, to be able to see some kind of sensor deployment strategy. What are the different kinds of sensors? When you have there is a lot of innovation happening at the sensor level to produce low cost sensors, to be able to do self-healing sensors, to be able to do edge computing at the point of data capture, to be able to have some kind of a local network. So suppose I am collecting data at a household. How will that data from the household be transformed or sent to a network infrastructure for storage? And how does blockchain come into play? So this is the first innovation challenge that we are looking at, and there is a lot of work that is being done by people in the IoT space to be able to build these devices. I know you said that we could have it interactive, and I think that I have spoken for the first, I would say, maybe a quarter of what I would like to talk. So I would like to kind of open the floor for any questions or any initial thoughts that you might have.
Okay. So, any thoughts for the moment or questions? No. I think you've explained it quite well until now. let's carry on.
So I mean, this is one of the things that, again, these graphs that I'm showing you is just not drawn to scale or not drawn from any kind of a data source. This is just to be able to demonstrate to you the impact. So these are more visualization rather than real data sources, because as of now, these deployments have not been done. So this IoT architecture for sustainability is a very, very critical aspect for the success of these projects. And in fact, a low-cost IoT architecture is very much the need. How do we kind of build these kind of sensors? So I'll give you one example: the flow meter, that the meter which captures the how much gas is being produced. The cost of that flow meter ranged from $50 to $500. And if the cost of the flow meter is $500, and you are going to be creating, a household is going to be creating carbon credits worth $35 or $40 in a year, uh, there is no break even point. This business is unsustainable, right? So over here, we have to be able to build those innovations. So now this company built a low cost sensor, which is costing less than $2 to be able to just capture the flow. Now, it's a low cost sensor, but at the same time, we don't know whether the sensor is working fine or not. So we have to do either edge computing, which is essentially computing at on site, which is, again, a state of the art technology, to be able to see whether the amount that this meter is sending is correct or not, or raise a flag that maybe this meter is not good. So that is where artificial intelligence comes into play. So there are some kind of a weather data patterns with which, and the household size, biodigester size, with which you will be able to train an AI engine to be able to point that possibly this data doesn't look good. In solar panels, there are certain things that happen in solar panels which were not which were off grid, which was not feeding power to the grid. There was this company which was claiming a lot of solar power that they were generating as an offset. And when they looked at the whole data set and they looked at the weather patterns, there were days when there was cloud cover and it was storm, and they asked them, how did you generate so much of solar panel on those days? And they didn't know because it was their sensor that was not working well, or maybe the data was fabricated. So this is one of the things. IoT is one of the things which is a very critical aspect for the capture of data. And then you have to build a network infrastructure, which is a low power network. There is a network called LoRa network, which works with GPRS system, GSM system, which essentially captures these data bytes on a periodic basis and then pushes it. They do a hub and spoke architecture, and what would be the most optimal architecture to be able to transmit data. So these are some very classic electrical and electronic engineering problems that come into play to be able to build this infrastructure. Now, once we build this infrastructure, of course, as I mentioned, this is a layered architecture. After IoT comes in the artificial intelligence component. Artificial intelligence component, as I mentioned, would give us a lot of things. So first, the raw data part is validating whether the raw data that is being captured by my IoT infrastructure is actually a valid data, which is kind of sometimes very critical, because you don't know whether that IoT device is working fine or not. And the second part, which is more critical, is on a live basis, whatever data that is being collected, I am going to build a risk outlook with predictive modeling as to what is the actual value of my data. Okay, so IoT, AI has two functions. One is data cleaning. Second is post data capture analysis. So once I've captured the data, I am able to say now potentially my system has 500 carbon credits that would be generated, and we are increasing every day. So today I have about 500 carbon credits. Yeah. So that essentially would be the next layer which we will have to build with artificial intelligence. So there would be predictive modeling, there would be on time or real time triggering systems to be able to build this. And then finally kind of building that whole valuation framework. So valuation framework would require multiple kinds of things. First, data quality. It would also require some kind of real-time market valuation. So essentially what we are going to do is look at what is the future outlook of a carbon credit. How is carbon credit going to be sold when it's going to be ready? What is the market process? What are the different things? And also look at any kind of a fraud detection. These could be decoupled from one another. These could be multiple companies which would be working on these separately. One is passing the thing to the other to be able to kind of make it more valid, make it more structured. Now, when we look at just to kind of, I have mentioned this, these are some basic problems in the carbon market, right? The carbon market is you will get the carbon credits. I'm working with a company called Sow and Reap. They are working with farmers to be able to reduce their water intake for rice farming. And by that, the methane gas emission is reduced a lot. But they've been waiting for their carbon credits to be issued to them by gold standard for the last 3 months. 3 months they've been waiting. Oh, today I will get our certificate. Tomorrow, everything is done. It's just that it is a pipeline. It'll take 3 months to get them to give them the certificate. So the 3 months that they don't have certificate, they don't have liquidity. They don't have money. They're running operations by taking loan from the bank. Right. So this annual verification cycle, there is so much of intermediary cost. These people have become like, the red tape, the crazy red tape. Just to get carbon credits issued, for every credit, you have to pay them money. There is a fee. Okay. And when they issue carbon credit, they will issue so much in bulk. That time the market does not want carbon credits. And that time nobody is buying your carbon credits. So you'll have to sell them at a lower price, because at the end of the day, there is nothing that you can do. And the biggest problem also is that these registries have become powerhouses. I hope nobody works for Gold Standard and Vera, otherwise they'll hate me here. But the point is that Gold Standard and Vera, as much as the purpose was to be able to help us offset the carbon, to be able to make things green, they have become institutions. They have become it's a big problem. Just there are like 5 companies that you have to go through just to be able to get carbon credits. So that small farmer who's doing things anyways cannot get anything. It has to be a big company that is going to use economies of scale to be able to bring things to the farmer. So it's it's uh, it's a lot of credit money that is flowing in the carbon markets, and that credit money is essentially to be able to support the operations of these carbon companies. And every day, every carbon company is going out of business. Now, I'm just going to take a little bit of a diversion here. And I know almost all of you must have had some exposure to blockchain before, but just I kind of like to kind of introduce this construct um, uh, uh, to everyone, just so that we understand where we are going with all this. So, this IoT data AI process, where does blockchain come into the play here? So as blockchain was conceptualized as a technology, as a back-end technology, it's not a front-end technology, where instead of having one particular system which controls all the power, controls all the data, we would have multiple nodes that would run, and each node would have a ledger. Essentially, in this ledger, we don't store data. What we store is we store the transaction. If we have to store data, we store a signature of the data. Storing data in a blockchain is generally not advisable because the cost would be very high. So you can have a data in your local machine, but we take a hash of the data, and that hash is what makes the data secure, and you write the hash as a transaction in blockchain. So uh, that's that kind of ensures there is some kind of transparency also, but privacy also at the same time, because you're not putting your data up there. And of course, the immutability aspect is very much required because this is decentralized. If somebody can change the data on their own will and fancy, then we'll have a problem. So blockchain brings in all these interesting pieces. But on top of that, the most important thing which blockchain gives, I think, for businesses is the smart contracts. Smart contracts are immutable in nature. Essentially, two people would digitally sign a smart contract, or multiple parties can also sign it. And these smart contracts are I can run synchronously or asynchronously. It's basically an if-then else statement. If this happens, then do this. That's the whole idea of a smart contract. And the validation point is what is called an oracle. So a smart contract essentially refers to an oracle. So if the temperature is more than 47 degrees centigrade, give me weather insurance. The person claims weather insurance. If the rainfall is more than 25 centimeters, give the farmer crop insurance, right? And that 25 centimeters is defined to go to some kind of a site. It can be a decentralized autonomous organization, it can be an individual, it could be multiple people. So however we program the smart contract, that smart contract would execute. Of course, the whole idea of blockchain is that there is cryptography in action. So this to the end user is more or less opaque. We don't The end user doesn't get to see how these things work. But from a programming standpoint, these are some very critical aspects that we look at. So blockchain essentially provides you a huge benefit as compared to traditional systems. A traditional system requires the organization to secure it. A blockchain, the security is kind of inbuilt. It is transparent. You can automate processes much more easily. These smart contracts are immutable and very easy. There is no ad hocness or there is no fuzziness. You could have build fuzzy logic, but we have not gone there as yet. In smart contracts, generally it is very black and white when we execute smart contracts, because if you build fuzzy logic, then we have to have a DAO to be able to run those smart contracts. Now, just to kind of add to this whole construct of blockchain, I just want to kind of present a few things to you. This whole evolution of this blockchain technology is very interesting, and it's important that we sometimes get very confused. Many people come and tell me blockchain, it's been there for a long time, but we've not seen anything. This is not going to be successful. AI has taken over. Yeah, but the problem is that many people kind of do not understand how this technology evolved. The purpose of blockchain when it was first launched or the first possible use case of blockchain, which was Bitcoin, was not meant for application or enterprise solution. It was meant for social justice. It was meant to be able to use that as a currency because people lost trust in financial institution. It was not an application. The second generation blockchain, which is Ethereum, which kind of introduced this whole construct of smart contracts, uh, they never talked about enterprise application. Idea of Ethereum was to create smaller communities, or you create a token and around your token you create a business. It is only the third generation blockchain platforms which came in much later, when the last 3-4 years, which actually have an enterprise grade solution. Now, you might see that I have conveniently not discussed about private blockchains when I'm talking about blockchain, because one of the problems that private blockchain faced was that they were just privileged databases. So it was very good to be able to set up a hyperledger node for an organization, but when you have to scale it up outside your organizational boundaries, it doesn't quite work. Because then who controls those nodes, who has power, becomes a big issue. So it is not advisable to be able to have a private blockchain if you are going to have multi parties set up into that infrastructure. And the reason why people took private blockchain is because the blockchain of that time did not have this kind of functionality. The third generation blockchain, which is the Solana, the Hyperledger, the Solana, Algorand, but there are a few others who have come in, are the ones which actually give you that kind of energy efficiency, high transaction, high throughput, reliability. If you do a transaction, you know it is going to be final. And they don't have any kind of a carbon footprint. So like, just for an example, a transaction in Algorand is actually carbon negative. So if you build an application in a platform like this, you're not going to have a carbon footprint. If you're trying to talk about environmental data and say, okay, I'm going to be using tokenizing environmental data, but your platform as such has such a big carbon footprint, then you're going to have a problem. Also, you want to have smaller transactions. Suppose I want to buy $5 of carbon credit, but it costs me $25 of transaction fee in Ethereum. It doesn't quite make sense. So, you'll have to have some kind of a mechanism. If I buy something for five euros, suppose, and I have to pay just a fraction of the price as transaction, which is a reasonable price comparable to credit card or maybe less than credit card, then it makes much more sense for me. So these are, I'm just giving you an example of Algorand because I'm doing it in Algorand. It's not necessarily this is the only platform to do it, but this definitely is a very interesting platform when it comes to environmental solutions, because it is a carbon negative blockchain platform. Any questions so far? So then I'll get into the whole construct of data tokenization. Okay, the key idea over tokenization is, a token is, in essence, is, when we talk about a real world asset, token is a digital twin of the real world asset. So suppose I have a house, I would create a token for the house, and that would be the digital twin of my house. So if I kind of want to transact in a blockchain based system, even in a Web2 system, there were tokens, but the purpose was different. In a Web3 system, in a blockchain based system, if I want to do transaction and if we do business processes to be able to buy and sell things in blockchain, then I will assign that ownership token of my house to somebody who's paying me money. Okay, and of course we could create a more complex process. That person can go and take that money from the bank can pay the money to me, and all these things can happen as one atomic transaction. Now, tokenization of data was done in the past mostly to be able to secure the data, right? To be able to make sure that the data is abstracted. Like, when we hear of data tokenization, one of the things in Web2 world mostly was when you actually swipe your credit card, right? The credit card, when you swipe your credit card, it is not the credit card information that is transferred, but there is a small token that is created, which is sent to the credit card server, which decrypts that token and says, yes, this is a real credit card. I am willing to accept. That's why the credit card transaction is approved. But in this this terminology in the Web3 space is essentially to be able to tokenize. I create a token which makes sure that the integrity of my data is protected. So suppose you have your degree certificate issued by your college. You issue a diploma from your university, and the student gets the diploma in digital format. You could create a hash or create a token of that particular diploma and digitally sign it and put it in the blockchain. And when they send the digital file to someone, that person will be able to validate that this is actually an authentic diploma because this was issued by this particular university and it is written in the blockchain. So over here, as you mentioned, right, one of the things that comes in very important is the identity. Identity is a very key piece because I can create a token, but who am I? So this identity is becoming a very, very key aspect in the blockchain space to be able to assert that this is a real thing. Now, in this application or tokenization process, the identity that we will be talking about is the identity of the IoT device. So the IoT device or the computation process or the node that is running in the IoT device will have an identity where data will be sent in and data would be collated all together. And then based on a methodology which is defined either in gold standard, Vera, or any other exchange, we are able to compute in real time what is the value of this particular tokenized data. Now, once you are able to assert or you are able to demonstrate the value of this tokenized data, this becomes an asset, right? So it becomes like, okay, my data over here is worth 20 carbon credits. Okay, I have tokenized a future 20 carbon credit data. Now I have to secure that data. I have to make sure that that data cannot be reused. Okay, so what we do is we put that data into a smart contract, and that smart contract basically locks that data. So now nobody can use that data. The data is now owned by the smart contract, and that smart contract will give me something to be able to create, to be able to put that data into a marketplace essentially. Okay, so we'll have to follow some kind of standards in that data. We have to follow some kind of mechanism. So the IoT data will get into some place, okay, which is a data store. From the data store, that data is going to be locked. It is going to be a very secure system because otherwise we can reuse the data multiple times and we can create a lot of problems here. We have to have all those checks and balances into place. That is what we are designing right now. That is what I'm building right now with this company called SoNReap and a few others actually from an infrastructure perspective. And once the data is locked as an asset, then I am going to feed it into a decentralized finance protocol. So the decentralized finance protocol, I am feeding that data as just like a real world asset. So it's like, here you go, I have gold, I have tokenized my gold. Okay, I am going to give you the custody of my real gold, and that token gold that I have, you will give me some kind of receipt. So essentially, when you feed something to a decentralized protocol, decentralized finance protocol, they give you some receipts. And this receipt is a token, a financial asset. It's like, you go to the bank, you give your gold, they give you money, right? They give you a line of credit. Same model, yeah. So I'm going to be locking my gold. I'm going to locking my data, feeding that data into a smart contract. And since I've fed that data into a smart contract, the now smart contract is the custodian of my data. And that custodian of my data I will be able to kind of go to a DeFi protocol. Now the DeFi protocol will have to run its due diligence. This is where artificial intelligence and other things will come in. I can do whatever valuation I want. If I have my house, I'll say my house is $10 million. There is a valuation process to it. Same thing with the data. They will run the grind. They will make sure that the data is clean. Data has come in from real sources, from IoT and other places. They will make sure that the price of the carbon credit or the valuation of the carbon credit that I'm defining is real. Of course, based on their risk outlook, they will not give me 100% of the price of the asset, but they will give me, say, 60% of the value just to be able to maintain their risk. This is generally how we kind of put our house on, if we get a line of credit on our house, they would not give us 100% of the value, they give us some value. So now this DeFi protocol has this particular asset with which they will be doing their trade, but they give me some receipts. And when they give me some receipts, these are called financial derivatives. These are called liquid tokens. And with that liquid token, you could do multiple things. You could turn that liquid token into stable coin and you would have real money in your wallet. You could put that liquid token into some kind of other staking platforms, and then that could give you generate revenue for you, right? So depending on how you want to set it up, right? I've designed some with real world asset, it's much more easy, but with data, this is what we are trying to do. So I've designed some things with battery, like, when you're returning battery, when you actually buy a battery and that would be recycled in 7 years time, we are tokenizing the future value of the recycled battery and putting it in a smart contract right now. And the yield that is going to be generated from that is going to pay automatically for the recycling of the battery. Okay, so this is how digitization and tokenization helps. What the next thing that we will be doing is kind of putting that into a staking and validation mechanism. So of course, as I mentioned, there would be some kind of a data validation, there could be some kind of consensus mechanism, there would be reward distribution process, there will be we'll have to make sure what could be the recourse if this data is fabricated. Okay, so that's called the slashing conditions. So if there is data that is fabricated, there is somebody who kind of just creates data out of thin air, then we run into trouble. So how do we kind of make sure that this is taken care? And then basically is the innovation of liquid staking. So essentially, liquid staking will give you a token which you will be able to kind of optimize. You could actually give it to a financial institution which will manage that for you also. It's essentially, I'm giving you money prior to you being able to sell your carbon credit, essentially. And that's the whole data tokenization structure. Just a small example of how we can do it in a solar energy monitoring system. So essentially, you can collect the data, you can tokenize the production data, how much solar energy is very easy because the chances of making mistake is very less. You are able to clearly capture the data with not too much of complexity. The capture mechanisms are very well defined because energy consumption, energy creation, energy storing, all these are 3 different parameters with which you are able to store it. And you can tokenize the future carbon credit. Not that you are not benefiting from solar panel, but you are able to tokenize the future carbon credit, which will kind of provide liquidity for your investment. So suppose I gave 30% discount. There is a startup company in India, which is building this whole partnership models with individuals. So they're saying, I will give you 30% discount if you take solar panel from me, provided that you are able to generate this much of electricity and maintain the solar panel. And if it goes bad, I'll replace another thing. So they are actually taking ownership of the carbon credit, and they are going to financial institution and taking that money to be able to finance the solar panel. But then the cost of financing is more than the cost of the carbon credits that they're generating, and their business is no longer feasible. So their business can be feasible if they are able to tokenize the future carbon credit, because even before they get the value of the carbon credit, they would have already paid off the price of the solar panel that they've invested. So this is how we are able to bring in liquidity. This is a slightly more complex model, which is carbon sequestration process. This is where the urban forestry and other things are coming in big way, and how do we kind of build the carbon sequestration model. So imagine you set up a forest. To be able to get carbon credits for the forest is a pretty long time process. There is solar imaging, there is environmental data. There are multiple ways to be able to capture the information through technology. But to be able to get carbon credit, there's no multiple ways. The same old technique, the same red tape to be able to get the money. And if you are able to get the liquidity for these kind of projects, these projects which are only currently being run because of government grants, can be deployed on a not sorry, on a private partnership model, which I think would be able to, they will scale much faster than just government grants, because that depends on the world economics, with how much, what is the outlook of the government. Like living in United States, you can see now most of the EV projects are going to die in the next 2 years here, because there is no government grant that is coming their way. In fact, all people who are doing innovation in EV, anything to do with electric vehicles or electric transportation, automation, uh, everything is going to is getting shut down. It's in a very sorry state of affairs, because the country's outlook is, we will go to conventional fuel. There is nothing called climate change. Yeah. So these things will keep coming, but as people, we still have to survive this. How can we survive? By creating these kind of avenues. So this is very much legal. This is very much under the process. This is very much how financing has been working. When it involves money, irrespective of whatever is the government, they are always going to accept it. That's the whole thing over here. How we are able to build other incentive models around this. This is slightly more advanced, but we are going to be able to build these because we have micro level data. So we have game theoretical approach, we'll have stakeholder alignment, we make sure with AI and other things there is no more manipulation. So people will get incentives also to be able to offset their carbon footprint, and they are going to be monitored by maintaining their privacy also. So essentially, it's not that I'm going to give somebody more money because I like them. It is a smart contract which is now going to be doing that, and the smart contract has no subjectivity and is going to maintain the privacy of the person. So that's the key idea. Of course, this is the technical roadmap that I kind of envision at this point of time. Uh, we are still in the process of building a technical infrastructure, but we are concurrently having the regulatory engagement to be able to make sure that the regulations are around. Market development, I have kind of started a few things on that. We are looking at DeFi protocols who are willing to accept these as assets. At the end of the day, you bring more assets to a financial institution, they will take it. It's not selling futures. So it's not like I'm going to be selling you my future value. I'm actually tokenizing my current value. So there's a subtle difference here. There are some carbon projects which are future value sales, like the light bulb replacement in many cities. So they are basically selling the carbon credits that they'll get for the next 5 years directly to the person, and the person is giving them money to be able to change the light bulbs to energy efficient light bulbs. But over here, this is much more dynamic. This is and we'll have to see how the adoption happens, but we are getting set up. There is a lot of technical challenges, technical innovation required, benchmarking required, lot of research work. Or this opens a lot of research work, right from electronics engineering to artificial intelligence to edge computing, and of course in the blockchain space, how we will be able to implement all this. uh, this kind of have the challenges that we are currently facing is, how do we make sure that data quality verification is there? What are the benchmarking techniques? There is some kind of regulatory uncertainty, of course. There could be market adoption barriers that we are looking at, technical scalability problems. Uh, there is also security considerations. Suppose somebody attacks and kind of starts making synthetic data, how do we protect it? How do we kind of make sure, because when it's in a blockchain and you have a smart contract which keeps running it, Do we actually go purely on a autonomous model, or would there be some kind of a model where people are involved? Uh, People are still worried about privacy considerations. We have to educate them a lot that, when I put a meter in your house and the meter is communicating to the server, I'm not judging you. It is a smart contract which is going to be feeding you things. We don't get to see your data. So these are certain things also. How do we kind of get set up? Just a quick look at where all this thing, we will be kind of scaling cross-chain environmental data. So people who are working in blockchain, what are the different areas that we will be able to kind of make sure that liquidity can flow from one platform to the other. I'm sorry, this diagram did not come out right. I will, when I share the slides with you, I will just fix this the diagram and send it out so that you can see what are the priority metrics areas in this research area. I had put this, but I think I'm presenting an earlier version. Then there is, of course, the whole idea of artificial intelligence. This could be very interesting. And then integrating with finance, that's the business and technology alignment over here. And how do we make this governance framework, which is more on a policy? So right from technology to management to policy is what is required to be able to turn this data into a valuable asset, something that we are proposing, something that we are looking forward to, and something where I would definitely love collaborations with people to be able to participate in this research. And in fact, this is more of an action research. So essentially, we are not only conducting research in the lab, but we'll have to do some kind of benchmarking. But this is uh, uh, already a work in action where we will be able to test out these constructs, test out the concepts that we build in, test out the benchmark, test out the ROIs, and be able to present some impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nico, for your presentation. And I'm pretty sure that we can have some kind of collaboration, and there's lots of people interested in collaborating. And besides, we have lots of wine producers in Portugal, so I'm pretty sure we could get one on board for having like a test case for this or a bed study or whatever that we can find. We still have time for some questions. I actually have some, but I'm always curious about some of these topics. But I will open the floor to anyone that wants to make a question. Well, we have one already, so you can go ahead, Benedita.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation, Professor Nikhil. I wonder, where do you envisage you would be able to implement your first pilot? Because as your comment let us understood, you don't foresee that USA will be very friendly in this regards, okay?
Yeah, no. So I'm actually in the process of building this pilot, or the technology behind this pilot, not me, but the whole ecosystem. I'm kind of the mentor and defining certain things. I do have a few things which from a risk outlook perspective and other things. So the financial aspect is not my area of expertise. I'm more of the blockchain and maybe and a bit of AI, but not IoT. So of course there are some IoT innovators who are already built a few things. And AI and blockchain is what I am kind of building. This is in India with biodigesters that about have been set up. So what we were lucky to kind of get this company very encouraged, because for starters they said no, we are not going to do this because we are happy with the carbon credits. We don't the profit margin is very less. We don't want to do anything in that space. But we were able to convince them that the value of their carbon credits would increase. And when they actually went to the market to just test out, their carbon credit value from say $12 went all the way up to $20 per credit. So they were very encouraged that, okay, there is a $8 extra that I'm getting. What if this is tokenized and other things? So just by simulation, I was able to demonstrate that if they will get a higher value of the carbon credit, that would happen in a year's time, but they will already get the value of their investment within that whole year. And I think that's what got them very interested, and they are pursuing it with us. But there is still, I would say, another couple of years before I be able to see some real results.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for that question. Anyone else in the room would like to make a comment or a question to our guest? I can make some comments and some questions, probably. I don't know. There are like three different topics that got my attention. Some are related to the projects, some are not that related. But one thing that got my attention was the IoT and the sensors, and something that you said, and that it's true. Sometimes we build the sensors, and the sensors are more expensive than what we can extract from them. So this is actually an issue, and I think sometimes we get carried away. I remember a personal case where I had someone installing a meter at their house to meter the solar energy in the house and whatever. And then he actually, by the end of 1 year, he could figure out he would save about 10 euros if he did something, but he wasted like 200 euros on the whole system. So cost-wise, it's not very effective, but yeah, it's something that happens. Then there is more related to the system and to your overview or architecture. We are always talking about carbon credits, but what about the cost of the whole system that runs the whole thing? Because there are also costs involved in running the blockchain, the AI. So how would you overcome those costs compared to the carbon credits? That's a question.
Yeah. So again, I feel that the objective of our innovation definitely is it's going to be a frugal innovation, for starters. But we cannot start with a frugal innovation. We will have to start with the baseline state-of-the-art innovation, and then eventually, iteratively, look at how we can reduce the cost. Right? I mean, we see in our lifetime only, all of us, the cost of storage. How the cost of storage has reduced, right? Same thing with AI. We are looking at AI, and we are talking about how much carbon footprint AI has, computational power AI has. But at the same time, now with edge computing and small language models, we are able to run pretty powerful AI models in our cell phone, right? Uh, so it's a matter of time as to how, like, I gave you this example of this flow meter, gas flow meter, right? We started out with a very expensive flow meter. It's a Motorola flow meter, which is used in commercial houses, commercial locations. That's not feasible in this project. That is not workable in this project. So then we kind of looked at a flow meter design. So this company actually designed their own flow meter, and they built, and I was talking about LoRa network. They built it with a LoRa network framework. And they designed this whole hub and spoke model to be able to send data on an intermittent basis. That's an innovation, but for that innovation, they had to start at least to be able to validate that this thing can work. We have to start with whatever is there right now, right? Coming to blockchain and AI, I feel as we keep moving on with innovations, blockchain is not very expensive to run. There is no cost there. There is no startup cost. There is only transaction cost, and we can always optimize the transaction. We can package everything securely in a system and run one transaction per day, which is going to cost less than 1/100th of a cent. Who cares? That's absolutely not a very huge cost factor. So that I mean, I'm following this approach of that is our goal, but I'm not starting with that. Because if we start with that, I don't think we'll be able to get to anything, in my opinion. And that's where I feel that there is a lot of scope of innovations, different kinds of innovators, and that's why I want to kind of talk to mostly from a technical standpoint, that let's start with this, let's start innovating. This is the cost per unit, this is the cost, this is how, what we want to reduce it to. How do we go about innovating it? Large scale production would be required, economies of scale would come into play, but you know that is an iterative process, in my opinion.
Thank you. It really highlights how you're thinking about the whole ecosystem and how it works. And that might lead me to one final question is, do you think, and I'll give an example for that, do you think that we might see some consuming some inversion of consumer patterns in the future based on this? Let's say, I'll give a strict example. In the beginning, or in the end of last century, we had incandescent bulb lights, for example. Let's say they would cost €1 per light per bulb, and each bulb would be wasted in 5 years. So in 20 years, I would have an expense of €4. Then those were replaced by fluorescent bulb lights that were costlier, but they didn't last much longer than the previous one. And then afterwards, we came up with LED, and LEDs are much more expensive, and sometimes they don't outrun even the incandescent lights. So, but they cost like 10 times more. But in the beginning, energy was quite expensive. And nowadays it's not as expensive as it was before, because we have solar, we have other kinds of ways. And there is even worse cases, because when you have the first case of the two lamps incandescent or fluorescent, you would replace a bulb. Now you have to replace the whole fixture for the LEDs sometimes. So I think that the manufacturing cost, when you have to replace the whole fixture, is much expensive than producing like an incandescent bulb light. But that might be just my opinion, because I don't have actual data to back up this. But in the future, do you think, not on this case, but on many other cases, do you think that we will come up to a step where we think maybe we should go back 10 years in technology and rethink or optimize what we had before, instead of putting sensors and electronics and everything on everything?
That's a good thought. I mean, as much as when I listen to music, I always long to go back to analog because I'm a music lover, right? But unfortunately, I can't even back my car without looking at a screen now. When I started backing, we used to look back, right? So the dependence of technology is a behavioral change that has happened to us. In many places, uh, it is something that you and I can see. In some places, it is happening in our backdrop, right? Which we don't know. To be honest with you, in areas where there is some kind of an economic gain from technology, I feel that people are going to make steps forward. Uh, uh, very much cited, and I remember my parents complaining about, like, when they came to my house and they saw me change a whole light unit. They're like, what is this? Right? We used to just change the tube light, which with the incandescent, the bulbs, and it was fine. It was like 1/100th the price of what you're putting right now. Plus, you have to get somebody to go up and fix and all that stuff. Uh, as much as we moved further, with like cell phone technology. The first cell phone, I think I remember having it for 4 years. I don't remember having any cell phone after that for 4 years, because they're designed to go bad in about 2 years. But over here, I think the thought process is a bit different. The thought process over here is not to overindulge in technology, but to be able to use technology to be able to make something sustainable, which is not. right? Over here, technology is not the lead actor, it is a supporting actor. The lead actor over here is sustainability, and is sustainable, or a green initiative. And a green initiative not being sustainable, being dependent on grants, being dependent on somebody else giving you money, is the problem here. I feel that's a very reputational problem that people face. Like, when people say, okay, I will go green, but what will I get? This is normal human tendency, right? I went to farmers and told them what organic farming. They say, what happens if my produce goes down? Like, oh, your organic produce is going to be down, but the value of the produce is going to be high. But what if I don't get the fair price? No, no, I'm not going to do organic. I'll continue doing what I have to do. Right. So we have to kind of balance it out and show how these sustainable techniques can be profitable. I feel that is a very hot button. Not that people are greedy by essence, but there has to be some motivation. If you are sustainable and you are able to be more profitable than not being sustainable, then it kind of gels better than going and telling them, if you're not sustainable, we'll all die. They'll say, okay, fine. By the time we'll all die, I'll be dead anyways. Who cares? Right. So, this is unfortunately, for people like us who care about sustainability, this is a very touching subject. But for people who are making their end, not able to make their ends meet, they really don't care about sustainability. They really care about whether they will be able to get more if they do something like this. That's the hard fact that kind of is my motivator here, essentially.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil. I don't think we have more questions. I would like to thank you once again for telling us some of the facts that most of us probably didn't know, and others that we know, but enlightening how this whole architecture might go, and opening it for other people that want to take part, which is also a great step, making sure that everyone can come on board if they want to try it, or if you want to have a case study. No, well, that's going to be interesting. So once again, thank you.